Welcome to the class. Once again, I'm Andrew Mead. Thank you so much for joining in. I'm excited to show you everything that JavaScript can do. You're making a very smart choice as JavaScript is currently seeing unprecedented growth. We're seeing growth in the number of people trying to learn the language, the number of jobs available, the salary that a JavaScript developer commands, and the number of places that JavaScript itself can be used, from web apps to server-side code to native mobile applications. Now, I know we're all very excited to jump into the course and to start learning the language, but before we do, there are a couple of things I want to cover in this one. First up, we're going to talk about how we're going to end up learning JavaScript, so the curriculum. How are we going to get from where we are now to where we want to be, which is in a position where we can write and launch our very own applications. The second thing we're going to do is go over a couple of tips and tricks that are going to help you get the most out of our time together. I'm excited to get to it, so let's jump right in and explore the course curriculum. When I was designing the curriculum for this class, I knew I wanted to create a JavaScript course that was as accessible as possible. JavaScript often gets a bad reputation for being a language that's difficult to learn, and I don't see that. I don't think it needs to be that way. So in this class, we're going to build incrementally on your knowledge, starting with the fundamentals and moving on to the most advanced language features. Along the way, there's also 90 challenges to give you real-world problem-solving experience so you actually know how to go off and solve your own problems and write your own code when you're done with the class. Now, the course itself is broken into 3 parts. In part 1, we're going to start with the very fundamentals of the language. We'll be installing some stuff on your machine that we're going to need for the rest of the class. You're going to create your first JavaScript script and run it, and we're going to figure out how we can start to use JavaScript to solve interesting problems. In part 1, you're going to start to build the task manager and note-taking applications. Now, in part 2, we're going to take what we learned about JavaScript and we're going to connect it to an interface. So we're going to connect it to a web application so actual users can use and interact with our apps. We'll figure out how we can use JavaScript to render things to the screen, like the list of the current notes or a list of the tasks that still need to be completed. You'll also learn how to set up user interaction so you can respond to things like button clicks and form submissions. In part 2, we'll be putting the finishing touches on the task manager and note applications. In part 3, we're going to move on to the third and final app, our Hangman word game. In this part, you're going to explore asynchronous programming with JavaScript. You're going to learn how to connect your application to third-party data sources. This is going to allow us to send data off to be saved or to fetch data that we want to use in our applications, such as a new puzzle for the Hangman game. Being able to connect your app to third-party data sources is essential for creating something real-world. Now, I'm excited to get to all of this and more, but before we do, let's move on to part 2 of this video, where I'm going to offer up a couple of quick tips and suggestions that are going to help you get the most out of our time together. The first of 3 tips has to do with you actually writing code. As you move through the course, if you watch the videos but you don't write code, you're going to get to the end and you're not going to understand JavaScript and you won't be able to use it to land a job or build your own apps. And that's obviously not my goal for you. In order to understand and master JavaScript, you need real-world experience writing code and solving problems, and that's exactly what this course provides. So as we explore a new language feature together, we're going to write some code together. Once we have the code, I'll talk about what the feature is, why it's useful, and how we can use it. It's important that you also write and run that code. Throughout the course, there are also over 90 challenges. This is where I give you a problem to solve, I give you time to pause the video and solve it, and then we come back together and work through the solution. These are just as essential to actually learning and understanding JavaScript. There's no shortcut to working through misunderstandings and bugs. This is what's going to get you to a point where you're done the class and you actually understand JavaScript and you can use it to build applications. All right, so make sure you are writing code as you move through the class. The entire course is filmed in real time, so you can do just that. Let's move on to tip number 2. The second thing I want to talk about is how you can ask questions. So as you move through the class, you might get stuck. Maybe we're installing a program together, but when you install it on your machine, it's not working correctly. Or maybe we're writing some code, but when you run it, you're getting a different and unexpected result. Regardless of what's going wrong, the course Q&A is where you can get help. You can find a link to the Q&A just below the video player. There you can browse previously asked and answered questions for that lecture, and you might be able to find a solution to your problem right away. If not, that's fine too. You can always ask a brand new question. All I ask is that you include as much information as possible. So if you're getting some sort of unexpected result or an error message, take a screenshot and include that with your question. If your code's not working as expected, zip up your code and include that with your question so I can actually download your code, run it on my machine, and see what's going wrong. All right, let's jump in to tip number 3. The last piece of advice I have for you is to take your time as you're moving through the class. Learning is not a race. It would be very easy to blow through this class in 4 days. I simply stop following along and I don't complete any of the challenges. I could be done by Friday. The problem is that when I'm done, I won't actually understand JavaScript. For you, it's going to take a little more time, and that's okay. Maybe it's 3 weeks or maybe it's 6 months. Either way is fine. My recommendation is try to stay consistent. Put in a little time every single week, and by the time you're done the class, you're going to feel confident in your understanding of JavaScript. Now, as you move through the course, you might get a little burnt out. Maybe you find yourself skipping challenges or not following along. In that case, I would just recommend stepping away from the course for a day or two. When you come back, you'll feel recharged and refreshed and ready to tackle JavaScript. All right, that's it for this one. Let's jump in to the rest of the section.